How much does a new pole vault pit cost? That is one of the most common questions I get. But honestly, it might not be the most important question. Today on the Gill1918 Project, we're going to talk about what actually drives pole vault pit pricing, the mistakes I've seen coaches make when comparing quotes, and why the cheapest pit on bid day isn't always the least expensive pit over. How much does a new pole vault pit cost? That's one of the most common questions I get. But honestly, it might not be the most important question. Today on the Gill 1918 Project, we're going to talk about what actually drives pole vault pit pricing, the mistakes I've seen coaches make when comparing quotes, and why the cheapest pit on bid day isn't always the least expensive pit over its lifetime. Welcome back to the Gill 1918 Project Podcast. I'm so humbled to be your host, Mike Cunningham. And today we're going to answer the question, how much does a new pole vault pit cost? Today's topic is one that every coach eventually encounters. Whether you're replacing an aging landing system, building a new facility, or trying to get a project approved by administration, sooner or later, someone asks, how much, Mike? How much does a new pole vault pit cost? And on the surface, that feels like a simple question. But the truth is, the answer depends on a lot more than most people realize. Because when we're talking about pole vault pits, we're not just talking about a price tag. We are talking about safety. We're talking about facility planning. We're talking about long-term ownership cost. And we are talking about making an investment that's going to serve athletes for many years. So today, I want to walk through some factors that influence pole vault pit cost and help coaches ask better questions when evaluating your options. Why is there not just one simple answer, Mike? Well, one of the first things I tell coaches is this: there is no universal price for a pole vault pit. A small high school program and a collegiate championship venue may both need a landing system, but their needs are completely different. Let's think about those differences. A small high school program might have 6 to 8 vaulters, limited facility space, occasional home competitions, modest budget constraints. Compare that to an NCAA program, an indoor training center, a year-round club facility, a state championship venue. The facility demands are entirely different. So naturally, the investment is different too. Factor number one, well, it's pit size, right? Probably the biggest driver of cost is going to be the size. And honestly, it's pretty easy to understand. Larger pits require more foam, more vinyl, larger top pads, more materials, more labor, which means they typically cost more. But here's where coaches often make a mistake. They focus entirely on purchase price. They ask, what's the smallest pit I can legally buy? Instead of asking, what's the right pit for our program? Those are very different questions because larger systems often provide larger landing areas, greater flexibility, additional margin for athlete error, and better long-term adaptability. The goal isn't finding the cheapest pit. The goal is finding the right pit. Factor number two, competition level. A beginning high school program and a collegiate program don't necessarily need the same solution. When you're selecting a landing system, I'm going to encourage you to think about the athletes that you have today, the athletes you hope to have tomorrow, the competitions you host, and the future direction of your program. One of the most expensive mistake facilities make is purchasing based entirely on current needs, because current needs tend to change. Programs grow, participation increases, facilities improve, meet schedules expand. A pit that seems perfect today may feel undersized 5 years from now. Factor number three, warranty coverage. This is one area coaches often overlook or make too simplistic. Most people compare price, very few compare warranties. And they should, because not all warranties are created equal. I'm going to repeat that. Not all warranties are created equal. Questions worth asking include, how long is the warranty? Is it a prorated warranty? What exclusions exist? How does the manufacturer handle claims? What's the reputation for that manufacturer for standing behind its products? A lower price may not look quite as attractive if warranty coverage is dramatically different. Remember, you're not just buying foam and vinyl, you're also buying support, partnership. Factor number four, weather protection. Let's talk about something that doesn't always show up in the first conversation, the weather protection. Many coaches consider weather covers or pit garages to be optional, and technically, they are. But if your pit lives outdoors, weather protection can have a major impact on lifespan. Think about what you're protecting that pit from: sun, rain, snow, ice, dirt, debris. I've seen weather covers pay for themselves many times over by helping extend the life of the landing system. The key is understanding that weather protection isn't simply an expense, it is an investment. Factor number five, long term ownership cost. This is probably my favorite topic because it's where many purchasing decisions go wrong. Most people compare quotes, very few compare ownership cost. But ownership cost matters. Think about replacement hardware, minor repairs, cover replacement, storage requirements, maintenance, service life. Two pits might have similar purchase prices and dramatically different ownership experiences. That's why I encourage coaches to think beyond the day the pit arrives. Think about the next 10 years. That's where value becomes visible. The surprise many coaches encounter. Something happens fairly often during replacement projects. A coach gets ready to replace the pit, suddenly realizes the pit isn't the only thing that needs attention. Maybe the standards are aging. Maybe the box collar needs replacement. Maybe the standard base pads need upgrading. Maybe that weather cover is worn out. Maybe runway improvements are needed. Replacing a pit often becomes an opportunity to evaluate the entire pole vault facility. And honestly, that's usually a good thing because safety doesn't stop at the landing system. Why purchase price can be misleading. This is one of the biggest lessons I've learned from facility planning. Purchase price tells you what the pit costs today. It does not automatically tell you what the pit costs over its lifetime. A better evaluation includes questions like, how long will this system remain serviceable? How durable is the construction? How will it perform over time? What support exists if something goes wrong? How much maintenance should we expect? The cheapest quote isn't always the cheapest ownership experience, and the most expensive quote isn't automatically the best value either. Context matters. Let's talk real numbers here. One thing coaches appreciate is having planning figures. As of 2026, Gill Athletics landing systems range approximately from entry-level NFHS compliance systems, around $17,000, growing high school programs, roughly $22,000 to $28,000, collegiate and advanced programs, roughly $28,000 to $34,000, elite training and champion facilities, anywhere between $40,000 and beyond. Double front systems, they can exceed $60,000. Now, those are planning numbers. Actual pricing varies based on shipping, graphics, accessories, weather cover, facility requirements. But having ballpark figures helps ADs and coaches, helps you begin your planning. What about used pole vault pits? Every coach asks this at some point. What about buying used? And sometimes it can make sense, but I just caution, proceed carefully. A used pit needs a thorough inspection. Look at the foam condition, vinyl condition, the dimensions, hardware, compliance, box collar condition. The challenge with used equipment is that hidden problems aren't always obvious, and sometimes a bargain, well, it can become expensive faster than expected. The best time to budget. Here's some free advice. If you're listening to the podcast, you deserve some free advice. The best time to start budgeting for a replacement pit is long before you need one. Programs that successfully replace equipment tend to perform annual inspections, meet with administrators regularly, build replacement planning into budgets, explore fundraising opportunities, research purchasing programs. In other words, the best replacement project rarely happens suddenly, they're planned. A better question. Let's finish where we started. How much does a new pole vault pit cost? That's a perfectly reasonable question, but there is, I believe, a better question. How much investment is appropriate for your program? Because that question forces you to think about safety, growth, durability, facility use, athlete development, and long term value. And ultimately, those are the things that matter most. In closing today, the goal isn't finding the cheapest pit. The goal isn't finding the most expensive pit either. The goal is finding the right pit, one that fits your athletes today and tomorrow, fits your facility, fits your budget, and most importantly, provides a safe environment for athletes to develop and compete. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Gill 1918 Project Podcast. If you'd like to read the full article that this podcast is based off of, you'll find the link down below in the description. And as always, coaches, thank you for everything you do for our athletes and for our great sport.